Well, welcome everyone. We're so excited for today to have Alisa Kesten with us. Alisa, it's funny because I remember when we first met about 15 years ago, you were the executive director of a nonprofit, Volunteer New York, and I was an insurance sales guy coming in trying to convince you to give me your business.
I'll be honest, Alisa is the only person who's ever actually kept you on track and on script.
Okay, but 2 meetings later, she flipped the tables on me and convinced me to join her board, which I did. And it was and will always be the most amazing board service that I ever had in my life. And I'm so grateful for all I learned from you. And I'm grateful you're here with us today.
Well, I had a chance to meet Alisa during one of the programs that she runs, Leadership Westchester, and was, like everyone, captivated.
Right.
By her passion and by her diligence and by her organization and the amount of things that one person could get done in a day. So welcome.
It's great to be here. And I will tell you, I often use the two of you as an example. When people want to come into Leadership Westchester, 2 people from the same company, I go, oh, we don't allow that. We once had a couple and the husband wanted to do it at the same time as his wife. And we said, absolutely not. And I'm talking to you 2 right now.
Well, it's good to have you with us today.
Well, it's great.
Why don't we start with a brief kind of overview of all of your experiences that brought you to Rewirement?
Well, I think that there is a through line that I can recognize looking back, but people might look at my resume and go, how in the world did this happen? Because I have spent some time in just about every sector you can. I was in nonprofit early on. I was in banking. I've dabbled in political management. I taught school for 10 years. I was a volunteer extraordinaire, worked with a foundation, learned a bit of fundraising. And the connection through all of that was giving back and community and volunteering. So the last 10 years, professionally, I had the distinct honor of being the executive director of an organization called Volunteer New York, which you 2 know very well, which is a wonderful organization located just north of New York City that connects anybody who wants to volunteer to a local nonprofit that needs them, whether they've got a little bit of time or they really want to dig in, like serving on a board that you and Mark have done so well. So that's the pattern, but that volunteering and community probably was the connector that wove it all together.
Well, that role that you played as executive director of Volunteer New York will be unmatched forever. The work that you did for that organization over that 10-year period, and the best fundraising feel-good breakfast in Westchester County that was filled to the max, 600 people. The hotel only fit 500, so they were overflowing into the hallways. But every year when you had that breakfast in April, there were people in tears. They were so moved by all of the speakers and all the award winners. So you've really just left a mark that will be very hard for anyone to match. And you know that, and that's part of building your legacy. And I'm grateful to have been part of it. When you left that job, everyone wondered, what's Lisa gonna do? What is she gonna do? Who's she gonna go work for? What nonprofit's going to be able to get her? And you didn't. You sat back a little bit, and then you put up that most amazing post on LinkedIn and Facebook where you announced that you were going into a rewirement phase. And I'd love you to talk more about that, how you came up with the word and what it really meant back then, almost probably 2 years ago.
Well, you know, the word retirement did not seem to fit because I wasn't sure what I was retiring from. I was stepping down from a job that to me was, you know, just fulfilled my purpose, which hopefully just about every other thing I've ever done has also been a part of my purpose. So it wasn't about retiring. It was about rewiring all that, my energy, my time, using it differently, seeing what else I could create. If you think about, just pulling out a box of wires, as our great communications director had me do, putting it all back together in a different shape is kind of what I am doing. And I think it's what a lot of people can do if they think of their life and their, reason for being and having fun as not just tied to a particular job or even a paycheck.
Well, it's funny, you make it sound so easy, and we find all the time, and you who are watching this as well might feel, I don't know how to do it. I don't know where to start. What do you mean, take the wires out of the box and reinvent yourself? It is so difficult. People just don't even know where to begin.
Well, I think that, Alisa, because you had that thread, that cord that went through most of your life, around purpose. What we find when people enter the traditional retirement phase, or even as we try to move them into retirement transformed phase, or rewirement phase, what they do is they've spent years attached to an identity that was attached to a title that was attached to a job or a career, as opposed to a real purpose. So I think you enter this phase with a real leg up.
You do.
Part of that came from that program that we both participated in, Leadership Westchester, which really forces you to sit down and think long before you're going to rewire what your purpose is. But I also think that you don't have to go through a program like that. You do need to, at some point, think about what motivates you. And, purpose is not something that somebody has and somebody else doesn't have. I don't think. I think everybody has a purpose to some extent. And, even someone who thinks I'm an accountant and that's what I do, at some point you'd like to figure out, what is it about that job
Right
that you like, that keeps you, getting up? Maybe it is the paycheck. I don't want to take away from that, but there's something else that you have in you that drew you to that line of work in the first place, that made you be an accountant rather than a landscaper. And that something in you is a bit purposeful, and maybe it can be retooled after you decide that you don't want to work 9 to 5 or 25,000 hours a week.
Right.
Yeah, you really,
that thread's there.
You really touch on, having someone move into the next phase of life, whatever they choose to call it, and act on it with this internal curiosity, right? So this idea of looking at what's status quo and asking deeper questions of themselves and, of their community and of their skill set and where it can be applied. And I think that's something that you've always taught almost every person that you've touched over the years.
Yeah, on that, were there some factors that created the desire for you to leave this 10-year career that was going so well? You were so well known. You were so well branded to the Volunteer New York name. You were the best connector out there, social media queen. I mean, you were just all over the place. What precipitated this change or desire to move on to the next phase? And did you have a vision for that?
Well, I mean, people who know me and have asked me that question get the same response. I started thinking about how I was going to exit from the minute that I started. Part of that is because I think that it is a privilege to lead a nonprofit. Maybe different than, a business, but when you're a nonprofit is like a gift that helps the community.
Right.
It wasn't my business. It wasn't mine. So the best thing that I could do is figure out how to keep the organization in good shape, make it in better shape if I could, to hand it to the next leader, and to be looking for that next leader and looking to give, build a team who could help that person. So that figuring out that I was going to leave was never a question. Right timing, knowing that the organization, there were certain things that I wanted to check off that I thought would help, build this community of volunteering in our area. But then, all those things that I did that you mentioned, hopefully I'm, putting them to use in other ways. But I have always believed in, doing something in legacy. Legacy is something that has been like rattling around in my head and my being since I was a very young person.
Well, it's
that's a great segue because, Mark mentioned your social media prowess. So I took the time to look through, your LinkedIn and, all your social media to see how you evolved it from all that you had done and all that you had accomplished over the years, building up LinkedIn, right? To what do you say now, right? So a lot of our clients will say, ex CEO
Right.
or ex accountant and
CEO at retired,
Yeah.
CEO at having fun.
And the last thing I think anybody wants to be is an ex anything personally,
Right.
but yours was really interesting, and I want to go through a couple of the components.
Yeah, the descriptors that you have on your LinkedIn profile, legacy creator, which is what you just talked
Right.
about, is amazing.
And even the one that you were most known for, this is one I'm really interested in. You were a purposeful connector during the vast majority of your career. And that's a real skill. How are you volleying that forward in your rewirement?
Every way I can, from working with someone's son to introduce him to someone else's daughter or someone's son to son or whatever. I like connecting that way, but I just started a mentoring through a program. And one of the things that I offered the mentee as hopefully what I'll bring to it is my network.
Right.
This is a young man who has, a good young man who made a mistake and is going to need to work his way out of this. The fact that there's a program that connects him with adults who can help is great. How can I help? I can use my network. I like connecting people. I like listening, hearing what someone is missing or hoping to find, and thinking about who I know. It's funny that you talk about LinkedIn. Years ago, I started building my network, and my youngest daughter said that she at that time was very embarrassed because when she graduated from college, all of the other moms came apparently with gifts for everybody in her house. Not me. I came with the offer, link in with me. You never know how that's going to work out. And I don't know. And frankly, it's worked out very well for a lot of them and me. So I just believe that making those connections is really important. So
Well, we
and
love
doing it-
that, and we know that it gives you fulfillment and joy to help others because we get involved in that as well, connecting people and mentoring. But one of the other descriptors is legacy creator, and I'd love for you to talk more about that, but particularly share the story of this project that you're taking on right now by writing letters to your grandchildren.
I love that.
So when I'll go back to the Leadership Westchester program. When I graduated, I had to write out my purpose statement. That's what we called it then. And so my purpose was and is to inspire and motivate and lead others to choose this life of community activism and leave behind a legacy. So legacy has always been important to me. Recently, I was listening to an author speak on a podcast that I listen to a lot. And he was talking about how he each year chose one word that was the word he would concentrate on, the concept. And he made it sound a little like all you have to do is sit and think about your one word and it'll pop out. And I was riding in the car and I yelled out, family. And so that just made me think about, what's legacy really all about? Who can we influence? Some people, Mother Teresa can influence millions of people. Who can I really influence? And so I am really lucky that I have 5 grandchildren ranging in age from almost 5 months old to almost 7.
Wow.
So I decided that I would start writing letters to them. They haven't received any yet, but I'm writing them, and I'm writing them on what's important for me to let them know.
That's amazing. I love that you're taking the time to do that. And it also is, God, it just allows you to spend time thinking about your life and the gifts that you have and how you can pass them on to your grandchildren. It's unbelievable.
For Mother's Day last year, my oldest daughter gave me this thing called Storyworth. And I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a very similar concept. She picked out 52 questions. Every Monday I get a new question. So it's 52 weeks in the year, 52 questions. And I write a paragraph around each question. And at the end, they bind it and send it to you as like your first book. So it's a cool concept, and I love the way you're doing it because it's very specific to information you want to give.
Yeah,
I love that.
I think those are great ways to purposely think about legacy. I really do, and I think that you're never too young or old to think about that.
Right.
Well, there's another descriptor on your LinkedIn profile, and it's very clear, and it's one word, and it says anti-racist. And I'd love for you to talk about that because we all need a dose of that. And I know you and I last summer exchanged books, and we were going deep on reading. You just gave me the most amazing book to read last week on Israel. So I'd love for you to talk about, why are you making such a big deal out of this? Why is it one of your 4 descriptors in your LinkedIn profile?
Well, because I think it's that important. And I also think that being anti-racist is something that I'll never achieve in my lifetime, but I want to work on it every day.
Wow.
I grew up in the South. And I grew up in the South in a small town. So in the heart of the Bible Belt, where religion and doing good was very important. And I was also a minority. I was Jewish, the only practically Jewish family in this town. But in a place where Blacks, whites, needed to get along, or we were all going to fail together. And so I left that place and moved to New York thinking that I was a certain kind of person, that I had figured it out, to use the current vernacular, that I was woke well before anyone had to shake me. And what I have realized, not just recently, but quite a while ago, is that I wasn't, or some people thought I wasn't, and that was hurtful to me. And so I have been able, over the past, I'd say 2 years, to be preparing not only for a lot of things that I wanted to do during rewirement, but one of them was to really dig into this on a personal level for me, but also then to, as quickly as possible, pivot and use what I was learning to share it, to try to make a difference. And that's part of what I'm writing to my children, my grandchildren about.
Well, it's fabulous. And I know you've had a huge influence on me. And I know the world needs a lot more people like you. And we do need to talk about it. And they say one of the best ways to learn something is to teach it. And you're doing that, which is great.
And that continuous learning, that long life learning. Mark and I tell as many people as we can how important that is at all stages of life, but certainly when you're in rewirement or retirement or about to go in, how do you stay on top of long life learning? And how important do you think it is for others?
And besides reading on racism, what kind of learning are you doing?
Well, I mean, I thank goodness podcasts were really invented during this time in my life, because, as a multitasker, you can really get a lot done. So I find it fascinating just to learn a lot as I can. The book that I told you, just exploring different opinions and viewpoints on current events, on political events. I definitely am doing that, doing a lot of reading on history, American history. But I'm also, I'm also like learning how to be a better golfer. I love that. I love that I can take this time where I have much more flexibility and really dig in there. And I think, that what I wish I would be able to do, but I will not allow myself, is I wish I could learn how to sing, but it would just be too painful for anybody who is trying to teach me. But
You never know. I mean, you never know.
I know.
Jody and I talk all the time about how many years we have ahead of us. And at 64, I certainly have 30 really good years ahead of me. And, you can be an expert at anything in 20 years.
I was just going to say, that's what studies show. If you do 20 years of something, you can become an expert.
But
I don't know if an expert means really good at it, but you would be an expert, right? Yeah.
Let's talk about purpose and fulfillment. And the reason we want to talk about that is because we talked about this before, is during our careers, it just sort of happens because you get up every day and you have to go to work and the people are lined up out the door and you're solving problems and all of that. How have you carried the ability to have purpose and fulfillment into your rewirement?
Well, I am very involved in the areas that we've talked about. So we talked about, what I'm doing to direct my opinions to my grandchildren while they'll listen. I'm also involved in some organizations more deeply than I was able to be, in a way that I want to. So I'm involved with one local organization, Westchester Women's Agenda, where I joined the board, but more importantly, I'm helping in whatever way I can the Racial Equity Committee that has been formed. I mentioned the mentoring I'm doing. Those are purposeful actions. I'm also purposely spending time with family in ways that I never could before. I always tried to make sure that I didn't miss a milestone or a game or a presentation, but I missed some things and I don't want to do that. I think the nicest thing one of my children said the other day was, it's great to have rewired Nana rather than working Nana. So, I just smiled. I didn't get a guilty ping from it. But I'm very fortunate, that I have grandchildren, that they're close by. And I can also tell you that I am also fortunate to be that peanut butter in a sandwich because I have older parents who also need me. And I'm grateful that I now have the flexibility to travel and to spend time with them. You know, life is fleeting. And so purposely using my time, not only to say yes, but to say no sometimes. I think
Let me ask you a question. What do you say to some of your contemporaries that are not finding their way quite as easily, that aren't maybe quite as self-motivated? And the reason I ask is, you know, studies say that people over the age of 60 are now watching more than 45 hours of television a week. So not motivated, lethargic,
No plan. They don't know what to do in the morning when they get up.
not
They're
really
lost.
focused on health and relationships and purposeful contributions. What do you say if you run into one of those kind of wayward ships?
I know some of those wayward ships. Some of them actually, I mean, I think let's set aside some who probably need support from professionals that I can't give. And there are some people who do. But look, my through line has always been volunteering. I think that is, it's such a wonderful way to expand your horizons, give yourself a sense of meaning, meet new people, feel positive. And so that is, you know, that is what I'm always encouraging people to do, and to, you know, dip their toes into it. I was talking with someone once at a cocktail party, and they were at that point probably the age that I was. And I mentioned what I did, and I was executive director of Volunteer New York. And this woman said, "Oh, I know the organization very well." And I said, "How?" And she said, "My husband and I have been volunteering for years separately, doing our own thing." And she said, and recently she said, "Well, I don't mind telling you, we are not getting along so well." And so we decided that maybe we should volunteer together,
Oh,
and that would help. So we went to your
sweet.
website and found something. So it also can renew a relationship.
Yeah.
You volunteer. So all of these things, I don't know, it just, it's still my number one advice, because I think it can be so interesting in different ways to people. When you travel,
Yeah, go ahead.
you can even use that as a jumping off point to explore places in a way that you wouldn't have. I just really believe that getting out of yourself helps you.
Yeah.
Well, what I was going to say is, for those who are listening that are wondering, you know, I'm bored, I'm lost, I don't know what to do. I've heard about this thing called volunteering. I know what it is, but I don't know how to start. So what's the one thing or the one place that everyone who's watching this can go to at least start volunteering? Is it the YMCA, the YWCA, a local volunteer organization? Is there a national organization? And we can put some of those links in the notes at the bottom.
Sure. Well, Volunteer New York is part of now an international umbrella group. So I think pointsoflight.org is a great place, no matter where you are in the world, to start, because you can actually put in your location and it can start to dig down to your geographic spot and see if there's anything like Volunteer New York in your area. And if not, it will start to at least get you thinking. But I think, you know, starting with what you like, animals, children, the environment, libraries, education, hospitals. There's not a nonprofit on earth that could exist without volunteers. But it's not just, you know, it's not just formal volunteering. You could start by checking on someone who, you know, an older person who lives, or someone who has a young child who might just need,
Yeah.
an extra hand, or call somebody and ask them if they need a ride to the doctor. I mean, it's kind of like getting the ball rolling. The hardest part is that first push, and then all kinds of ideas will pop up.
Well, Jody and I talk a lot about effort in retirement. And it takes effort to be good at anything. It takes effort to be a good husband. It takes effort to be a good volunteer. It takes effort to be a good employee or a team member. But you know what? I think it takes a little more effort in retirement or rewirement, in your case, to do some of those things, because it doesn't just come at you. You have to go looking for it. So
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you one last question. If there is one piece of advice, and it may be volunteering, but one piece of advice you have for anyone approaching this time. So maybe they're not in rewirement or retirement, but they're thinking about it. They're about to approach it. What would you say to them?
Well, definitely. I mean, my number one advice is to volunteer, is to think about what it is that has given you pleasure. Think about what you never want to do again, and figure out, how you could use that to make a difference somewhere. I think people will always agree that the secret sauce of volunteering is that you always end up feeling like you're getting more back than you ever gave.
Right.
And that just makes people feel good. Once you're feeling good and positive, then I think in rewirement, give yourself time to enjoy your newfound flexibility. Don't feel like you have to have all the answers at once. But I think what you two are doing is really important, because you're giving people sort of a framework to start thinking about it ahead of time. And if they haven't thought about it ahead of time, to think about it once they have the time to really consider what they want to do. And I think that, I mean, I've sent many people, to consider working with you, because especially if you've come from a real career where there've been parameters, having a little bit of a framework in this new period of time can help, you're right, sort of get motivated to get going.
Yeah, you need a little structure. And if it begins with volunteering every Monday and Wednesday morning for 2 hours, that's structure. And that's all it takes, like you said, to start to feel good and get into a rhythm. And then you build on top of that. Alisa, your story is amazing. We are so honored to have you with us. And I'm sure that the audience may have questions, and we encourage you to share this video with your friends and leave comments below, and we will definitely come back and answer. I don't know if you have any thoughts, Jody, to finish up, but it was great.
Yes, thank you so much. And for the listeners out there, make sure you subscribe to the channel. So click below and subscribe, and we'll be back with more exciting rewirement. Maybe we can get that phrase coined, but we'll come back with more stories, and we'll be sharing them with you.
Thanks again.
It was great talking with y'all.